Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reacts where today we have ourselves some tracks from an X named Horizons Demise titled The Last Light. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track, rather the tracks on the screen. I've just got my cat walking over the keyboard right now, so that's fun. There'll be 3 tracks today from this Last Light EP. We'll get the art up on the screen there. Hey Nushk, you okay? We've got New Beginnings as well as Last Light and Self-Betrayal. So we're going to listen through each of these tracks from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Starting with New Beginnings, let's go, let's do it. I'm loving the soundscape immediately, the atmosphere. Fantastically heavy. Just turning it up a little bit. Very used to halftime here. Great contrast between the growls and the clean vocals there. Yeah, great use of space there with that that little gap there after the fill. Kind of poignant with the bass, isn't it? Great call and response here. No, that was effective. That was really good. So this was New Beginnings. the first track off the EP titled The Last Light from Horizons Demise. Now, this track, I think it is talking about their new beginning, how they're resurrecting. Maybe it's like a new beginning, like literally in their world, they have been brought back to life again. They're talking about embracing the darkness and stuff like that. Maybe it's like an evolution for them, so to speak, or some sort of ritual. Or maybe we might just be alluding to something we've got going on, in the future, because it's nice to have that kind of cinematic introduction to this track. I think part of what I appreciate about this song is just how well we begun things. Often you'll have a riff or you have a vocal line or something like that, but to have the kind of sci-fi elements going from left to right, like from start till finish there, and to go straight into the instrumental parts after that, it's just phenomenal. And it kind of gives the impression that they're fairly serious about what they're doing there. They're trying to provide more than just like another metalcore EP. And it adds a bit of kind of shimmer and sheen to it and a bit of polish. And it kind of makes you wonder what's going to happen next. And I appreciate that. I think another thing I appreciate about this track is that is the quality of vocal performance overall. I think that whether it was the growls or the kind of more sort of fry stuff or the clean sing that we have there, whatever we came across, the technique was very solid. And I appreciate the fact that we had some really compelling melodies in those hook sections and that we weren't afraid to do some call and responses or have both styles of vocals, the harsh stuff and the cleaner stuff together at the same time. It was anthemic whilst I think trying to communicate the subject matter that we were discussing. Like we talk about in the shadows, we find a way here, and there's this kind of angst and this struggle, this tension that we're going through here. And it's almost like when we go into the chorus and we're trying to talk about, like, again, our resurrection, everything like that, it seems like things are kind of looking up in a weird way. That's not sort of disingenuous and cheesy. The way that the guitar harmonies with the chords and like the octaves and stuff go behind it there, the way the song builds with the drums as well, the constant progression moving forward. We'll talk about the actual instrumental performance in a minute. But it's just the way we communicate and express ourselves within this track is strong. And I think that with a first impression, you need to make that count. And I feel as if they've done it here, both stylistically and also in regards to, I think, what's being sort of expressed or communicated throughout the lyrics. I think as well, it's testament to the quality of this track that there are just so many different guitar riffs involved. And I feel like we have such a great sort of synergy throughout the various elements instrumentally within this piece, from the way that the drums adhere to a sense of groove and pace that reflects what we're doing rhythmically with the guitarist, whether they're power chord elements or sort of single string picks parts. We have great, interesting use of sort of like chromatics as well as in the diatonic sort of like minor leanings throughout the majority of the track there, which I appreciate. Shows a fundamental understanding of music theory and composition. But it's just also that we managed to combine it with points where there are no drums or guitars at all. We simply allow the bass to kind of be, or at least it's minimalist in that respect. And so we not only have a really competent, colorful performance overall, a song that's written quite neatly with these instruments, you also have space and dynamic range in there, which allows it to be more impactful and to really make the most of this 4-minute 20 track that doesn't really have any sort of like sub-lead elements there. It's mainly vocal oriented. I just think it's really well done. It's a great start. We've got The Last Light, track number 3 off of the EP, 2 for today for us. I mean, it's just furious off the bat, isn't it? Phenomenal drum fill. I mean, it's busy, but I think it works. I just want to pause for a second. I think that it's important to have clean parts in these tracks, not because I feel that the growled or kind of the fresh vocals are done poorly, but because there will just be situations where the clearer vocals, the sung parts, are just a little bit easier to understand, in terms of what's going on. So I appreciate that we have that balance there for that part as well. Great transition to the chorus here, or the rotary, I suppose. Phenomenal flurry with the strings there. A neoclassical string solo? Or guitars, right? Lead guitar tapped. Phenomenal. Phenomenal stuff. So that was The Last Light. Now I'm following on from New Beginnings, and I kind of do get the feeling that we are discussing sort of like a post-apocalyptic or an apocalypse situation where it does kind of represent our last days on this earth. And I think there are parallels that can arguably put towards modern day. But just the idea of watching the final light fade away there, and even if we look into our own resurrection, our own revolution, just trying to sort of like find a way through the mire, it's sobering stuff. I think it's an interesting story, and I appreciate as well that this is carrying over the different tracks. I assume this will continue to self-betray her as well. But it's an interesting topic, and I haven't really actually heard a lot of it in this kind of music, so I enjoy that. So in terms of stuff I think this song has done well, one of those things is that we just have some really tremendous drum lines. The percussionist is phenomenal. I'm blown away by not just the variety of different drum grooves on the cymbals, the kick and snare patterns, but it's also just what we're going. It's the speed of those double kicks. It's the proficiency of the various tom fills. We have 16ths and triplets, 30 seconds, and it's just like stunning stuff. But we also know how to kind of bring things down a little bit. And I enjoy that because the last thing we need is to have too consistent drum beat when we have all these interesting ideas happening with like the guitars and the strings and the bass and everything like that. It's just great to not only have the tempo here to have a great sense of pace, to have variety amongst the normal half and double time stuff, but also to be able to have a great sense of chemistry and be responsible providing that really stable rhythmic foundation to the rest of the band. I think in addition to that, what's going on here that I appreciate is the fact that we have the strings. The inclusion of that in that interlude section was just a stunning display of awareness that at this point we just needed to add something new. And I think, again, it really adds a sense of drama and theater to a track where I feel as if we needed it. We needed that, the last days, to have that, that cinematic feel, like you're listening to a movie. And like a movie soundtrack. And I think that they managed to nail that here. And I like the fact that not only did we have the strings in the interlude, they continued throughout the entirety of the piece. They continued into the last sort of chorus section there. So you had this great unison, this build there. And it's just stunning stuff. Just really captivating, well thought out decisions there. With, again, a guitar solo happening there as well, some really interesting tapped components there. We just continue to add and develop in a way which I was not expecting. As those little things, those little bits of ear candy and decoration that make a track special. And I feel like it's a great use of time and real estate in a piece where, it does enough without those extra things to be intriguing, but they're just giving more, and I like that. I think finally, it's the fact that the studio production in general is really tight. I like, what would happen at the start of New Beginnings with the Foley, the cinematic elements in there. But it's also the fact that it just sounds commercial grade in regards to how the vocals are treated, as well as the guitar, bass, drum, and violin parts. I have no complaints at all about the way that we're handling things within the EQing and the stereo field and stuff like that. There's dynamic range to the piece. All the fundamentals there are covered as well. And you need that for an EP, and I don't sleep on that. And that, like, the transitions between sections, such as the chorus into the rotary reverb on the guitar there, the way things are leveled there, it can make or break a track when you do things like that. If there's too much of a shift, it can be a bit too kind of intense or like a little bit distracting, but they don't have that issue here because they know what they're doing. I don't personally have any complaints or things I want to fix about any of the previous two tracks, by the way. I try to usually mention that per song, but honestly, I'm just blown away by what I've heard so far. It's really positive stuff. Part of me would have wanted there to have been these lead sections to make up for like the real focus on that hook line or that chorus section being repeated in certain elements here. But again, they had that amount of difference in development there to be able to make it work, and I can appreciate that. We've got track number 3 for today, Self-Betrayer. The fifth, the final one off the EP. Great use of filtering here. Fantastic, man. Great gallop, man. I like that. I love the tension in that lead line in the background, dude. Interesting interval choices with those chords in the background there, and the rhythm. Pretty Circo on the growl there. Nice coloration of the tom fills here. how we're going to finish this. Oh, we're doing a fade out at the end. Very nice. Very nice. Classy way to finish things. Oh, we're just done. It's the end. It's the end of the EP, ladies and gents. Okay, so that was Self-Betrayal, should I say, track number 5 off the EP, the third for today. So I kind of get the impression when you beginning to hit Last Light in relation to this, it's almost like the last light is not literal, but like symbolic. It's like the end of days, and maybe we're having to sort of like deal with the consequences of why there is this last light there. And the people that stuck in the shadows and kind of worked through it were the ones who managed to kind of find their own kind of way outside of needing the light. And then maybe self-betrayal or the people who need the light, or maybe the light screwed them over, maybe they screwed the light over. I'm not sure. You just get the impression that this is more the consequence or the raison d'etre for all of this kind of thing occurring. And so I think that with the added context of potentially Fortitude and Reborn, you might have like the rest of it down. But I nonetheless feel like this is a really intriguing story there. I just would need probably more than one listen through each of these tracks just to kind of get the context and maybe listen to the rest of the two to kind of feel like I had everything. We'll talk about that more in the overall conclusion. Just for now, I think what I want to talk about, one of the things I appreciate with this one is specifically the vocal range, and it's something with the previous two as well. Now, with the clean vocals, the kind of melodic parts, I like they were in that upper range. It just sits so nicely on top of all the other things that are going on within the mix. It is such a nice contrast, such an effective contrast, should I say, to what's going on with the rhythm guitar parts, the power chord elements, even the mid-range kind of octaves or sort of harmonized guitar leads there, the bass line especially being like a few octaves below, and the drum parts being non-melodic here. I like that when we're up in that high range, it's far easier to hear the higher range vocals, and they also provide a nice sense of contrast with some of the growled or kind of like fresh elements from the vocalists as well. It's really effective. So I think that choice there, honestly, like it's a choice of vocalist more than anything like that, but I feel like this was a good fit for this kind of genre, and I understand why they are pivoting towards those more kind of those melodic, catchy hooks in those sections. Even though I feel this one was a little bit more kind of metered, there was a bit more kind of like kind of a bit more grittiness to the progression with this one. Some of the triads or interludes or intervals within the chords within the progression there were a bit more kind of like edgy, and I kind of dig that. I think the second thing I want to sort of point out is the use of that fade out at the end. I feel that's effective because it simply signals to the listener. It's not a massive thing. It just signals to the listener that we are done with the EP. And that may not seem like a massive thing, but really it's just, I don't know how else we could have finished it. Going for a strong finish or a big kind of crescendo or finale at the end can be effective. And there's a lot of albums or EPs where they do that. But it's also a situation where it's just been overdone. And sometimes maybe you want to insinuate that things are not absolutely resolved, and maybe this is an endless kind of loop with the last life, rebirth and reborn, and kind of going through this. Maybe it's just something we will kind of contend with, and that's kind of what it's inferring there, is that it's a story that doesn't end. I'm not sure. Either way, it's intriguing. And I think finally, it's just the overall tightness of the performance between the different instrumentalists involved, regardless of whether we're going half time, normal time, or double time. Because it took me a little bit to get into the CP and really sort of like understand what was going on. Again, we'll talk about more in the conclusion, but it's just knowing how to capture those different moods and affectations within the harmonies, within the various sort of like guitar parts, the harmonies there and the melodies. They're having that sense of groove with the bass in comparison to the drums, allowing ourselves to have breakdowns occasionally, allowing ourselves to have lighter sections there. It's all about paying attention to one another and having that sense of innate kind of like it's both self-awareness and awareness of others. And you don't always get that with bands. Because I think I'm just tapping through different parts of this track, especially at 5 minutes, and no part is the same. I mean, the choruses are repeated, but there's all these different riffs and concepts that go between each other so easily, and it's just so effective because of that compositional diversity there. And I think that you need it in a song like this, especially again if you don't always get the vocals through clearly, you're not always understanding what the story is about, we want to also be able to appreciate the music. And again, that is not a mark against the growled vocals. I love my middle. It's just the fact that, again, there are some parts where I couldn't get the words through clearly, which is thing, and that's just that's part of what it is, and that's okay. I still appreciate the tone and the expression and the intent of it, and I feel like things are well polished in general. But we're going to talk about CP more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this EP from an act named Horizons Demise. The 3 tracks off of this Last Light EP titled New Beginnings, The Last Light, and Self-Betrayal. Now, my understanding about this song is that it's talking from the perspective of like this great catastrophe occurring, or that is about to occur, that we saw the last light, or that we're seeing the last light, that we are continuously needing to evolve in order to come to terms with it, and that there have been people who have betrayed ourselves by not either adhering to what is required in order to be able to get through this apocalypse, or that have simply caused it to occur in the first place. I feel like you'd need to probably listen through Fortitude and Reborn in order to really kind of get what's going on here, and I feel like there's more nuance I'm missing. Which is why I was kind of like look back at how I started this review, and I'm not necessarily sure of how strong the first part was, but regardless, I think with this overall conclusion, that's my kind of interpretation on it, and it is a first listen basis. I usually talk about a few things I appreciate about these EPs in the overall conclusion, because I've had individual sub conclusions for each track. So if you want to hear what I think about each specific track, you can check out those at the end of each bit in the chapters. But my overall thoughts on this EP, one thing I appreciate is the vocal performance there. I appreciate that we had really kind of like effective vocal melodies within those hook sections that were anthemic. We were clearly very comfortable with the way we approached them, and almost had some in the nice, how do I describe this, they were kind of catchy and anthemic and almost kind of like a kind of a poppy way without sounding disingenuous or cheesy. I think part of that was the instrumental parts behind them, but it's also that there was an intensity with the expression of it that seemed legitimate and authentic, and I appreciate the texture and timbre of the vocal technique there, the way we captured things with our kind of head and chest voice there, that we harmonized with the other kind of guitar, string occasionally, kind of bass and drum elements there, and maintained a sense of kind of like harmonic and rhythmic cohesion. And the growls and kind of like parts when we came together and we call and responded, there was just so many cool ideas that were explored through this EP that I feel just made it really interesting from start to finish with each of these 3 songs, and it gives me faith for the other 2. I think another thing I appreciate is the actual structure of each of the individual tracks. I don't think I spoke about structure in the individual tracks too much, but overall there were just 3 songs that at over 4 minutes, that's what outside of the 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, where if it's less than 2 minutes, you might be missing some really important context to understand what's going on. And if it's over 4 minutes, well, you've got to kind of do what you can to keep your main theme interesting if you're only using a few, let alone 1, because otherwise you're kind of screwed unless it's like through composed and you're very confident. But with this band, Horizons Demise, there were just so many different guitar riffs and a wide variety of different rhythmic phrasings there. We explored diatonic major and minor scales, Phrygian modes, modal kind of light passages as well, some chromatics as well, some flat seconds. We had great use of harmony, like the flat second intervals for tension at some points there, some interesting tapped arpeggios, and a later part of the last light there. And we never fell flat. We knew how to use our power chords as well and kind of go for the chug drop tune zeros and stuff, which was cool. I think the bass parts were tremendous sort of underneath as a foundation with the drums providing, but it's more so the way the songs flowed from part to part that was just awesome, because you can have only so many different riffs before it almost becomes a kind of a mishmash of different ideas and concepts, and we never felt alienated, or I never felt alienated by what I was listening to here. I could kind of follow along what was going on most of the time. It was energetic and exciting, and the music was heavy, and it kind of wanted to rip your face off a little bit, but it had a kind of commercial grade professional polish to it that kind of reminded me of a lot of the bigger kind of like more well-known metalcore acts that I've listened to in the past. I think about like, it's a poor example potentially, like As I Lay Dying, just because of their history and stuff like that, but I love their music, and I just think that they smashed it in this. I think that structurally as well, with the verses and choruses being effective and, like more kind of like context insinuated, you also had, again, solo sections, but also parts where it kind of went to a completely different guitar tone for a bit of effect there, or kind of a somber shift, or you had the strings included in the last light there, or you had the big new beginnings with the kind of sci-fi kind of spoken part about the end of days and stuff like that, going from left to right in the stereo field. It's just interesting ideas that are presented in a way that makes sense musically. And I just feel as if the structure on these tracks overall is very, very, very well done. I think finally it's just it's the instrumental performance itself as much as the way that it's a mix up between the studio production and the instrumental performances. I want to say that I feel as if the characterization of the strings in the middle track, the last light, was just phenomenal, and I feel as if the way that we handled things with, again, the different various different guitar, bass, and drum parts was just incredible. But I'm going to go with studio production here. I love the way that the vocals were presented across a wide range of textures and timbres that we had there. The guitars double track, just so heavy, but also allowing ourselves a little bit of kind of like less kind of heavy kind of rotary stuff. Like the reverbs, delay tails were fantastic. The kind of sub lead tap part was wonderfully layered within the mix there. The strings, the way they were captured there and the way they floated and kind of like severed the way through the mix in a really kind of artistic, kind of dramatic way was wonderful. The bass tone just so thick and full in the bottom there, nicely rounded, reinforcing the root notes. Fantastic sense of grace with the drums, and the drums were just so they were just phenomenally well played. I love the way they were produced as well. Just the tone of the kicks and snares and the tom fills and the very sound. I think in Self Betrayed there was some really cool like floor tom fills, like the high and lows and stuff like that. And the way they kind of pitter pattered around the place was just tremendous. And so you have all these parts captured and glued together and EQ'd and put around a stereo field there, and with there being dynamic range and that wonderful automated fade out of the volume near the end. And then you just have it ends, and it's commercial grade in regards to studio production. So overall, I think this is just an incredibly positive review of these tracks from the EP. I'm really blown away by it. It's a fantastic time. No complaints whatsoever about what I've heard. Again, I think I mentioned at one point that there is this propensity to go for those cleaner sounding, more colorful choruses with sung vocals there. And that was the thing that happened with every time. And they sounded similar, but I'm wondering if that's just more of a kind of preferential stylistic thing, that they just like the sound of it. I mean, that's of course a given. It's just, I like when you include the growlies with the sung parts. And I just think you can like have parts where it kind of, you mishmash or have more color responses to that. But I also understand the need to make it memorable. So good stuff. But that's effectively my review of the CP from an act named Horizons Demise, titled The Last Light, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe. And please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever thought of crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next Xperia X. Spiderhands out.